Welcome to the weekly water outlook. I'm John Felt. It's July 24th, 2016. Now, typically, this is the time of year that we start to get closer to August, and what that means is that atmospheric energetics, or the energy in the upper atmosphere, begins to really slow down. The jet stream gets weak, or it pushes well to the north, and overall, the type of energy associated with weather systems generally becomes less and less as we get into August. Now, over the last week, I wanted to show you, actually, this is the last 30 days, and this gives some idea of areas that have been fairly active. Now, just because we had a number of rain days doesn't mean we got a lot of rain on those days, but it overall shows that the Corn Belt has had adequate precipitation in most areas. Now, some exceptions are eastern South Dakota and Ohio, parts of Michigan, but everywhere else has had a pretty decent number of rain days. We also see how we've had such reversal of conditions over Texas. Those areas of darker brown are showing 0 or 1 day of rainfall, measurable rainfall in the last 30 days. Southern Oklahoma also quite dry, up to 2 to 3 days at the most. Now the southeast U.S. is also in a drought. It doesn't show up quite as much because we typically do get scattered showers and thunderstorms this time of year. So there have been a decent number of days when something's been there, but it's overall been pretty scattered and fairly light, and that's why it hasn't helped a whole lot. If you look really close, you can see some areas of that lighter coloring, and that's indicating pockets that not as much rain. Generally over northern and central Georgia, over northern Alabama, a bit more, but still nothing that's going to really do a whole lot to the drought. So if we look at how soil moisture has changed over the last 30 days, you can really see that improvement over Iowa, over Missouri, eastern Corn Belt, Kentucky, parts of Minnesota, and then you can see in South Dakota, eastern South Dakota, a significant drying, and then that really significant drying over the southern tier of the U.S. from Texas right over towards southern parts of Alabama, Georgia, eastern South Dakota, and almost all of Florida. So we've had some very significant changes in soil moisture over the last month, with some areas really improving, other areas definitely getting worse. Now, with that background set, let's look at precipitation over the last 7 days, starting with Texas and Oklahoma. No rain at all, so really no improvement there. Southeast U.S., this is more your typical summertime pattern. So if we keep this up, I do think we're going to begin to see some modest improvement. It's not going to be quick, but at least we're going to be staying a little bit closer to normal precipitation rather than significant rainfall deficits. Now, I'm going to give you a hint. I don't necessarily see this continuing in a persistently long period of time. But over the last week, there was some scattered precipitation. And then as we get up into the upper Midwest, parts of the central Midwest, Great Lakes, you can see that was really the rain story over the last week. And if you look at these streaks here, northwest to southeast, when we get that northwest flow, west or northwest flow, we get energy associated with that flow, and we get more significant precipitation. So especially Illinois, southern Wisconsin, those were the winners this week from precipitation. And you might remember southeast Iowa was quite dry as well, and that region received a couple inches of rain, it looks like. So good news for that area. Now, the northeast U.S. has been very dry as well, and you can see there was some precipitation, but it was overall fairly scattered and on the light side. So when we look at the last 30 days, departure from normal, areas in green and blue, 1 to 3 inches more rain than normal. Matter of fact, parts of east or western Kentucky, those areas in purple, that's even up as much as 5 inches or more above normal. Texas and Oklahoma, that yellow or brown, 1 to 2 inches deficit over the last 30 days. Then we get into parts of the northeast U.S., Pennsylvania, New York state, and we can see, again, 2 to 3 inches. So those areas need more rain. Now, over the southeast U.S., this is where it's been very much variability. Look at northern Alabama. I see some yellow. I see some green. That's saying your typical summertime pattern. Some areas are getting a bit more, some areas a bit less. But if we get into Georgia, I just don't see that. I see more yellow. That's indicating those deficits of rainfall, an inch or two over the last 30 days. Now, the tropics have been very quiet. If you look at this satellite picture, really no organized convection. Matter of fact, very few clouds. And that means in the short term, there's something inhibiting development. But in the long term, as I mentioned in a post over the last week or so, I mentioned that the waters are unusually warm. So if something does break down the road in August or during the peak hurricane season, I think we do have the potential for stronger storms because of that energy that's out there, that heat energy that's stored in the ocean. As far as rivers go, the rainfall over the Midwest brought some flows up towards high readings, generally along the upper Mississippi and its tributaries, strong high within bank flows, not much flooding. And this time of season, it's usually very isolated. But many more areas have low flows, and you can see the biggest concentration is centered over the northeast U.S., that's that area in red, and parts of northeast Alabama, northwest Georgia. But you can see all rivers in Georgia now are getting fairly low. Pennsylvania, New York State low, and even Texas now, which had been running very high from the spring rainfall, rivers are beginning to run quite low. We haven't had rain for weeks in that area. So remember what I said as far as that jet stream energy. If we're in the jet stream energy here, you're at least going to have a chance of rainfall. This is the dome, the hot dome of very hot weather, record high temperatures. And I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like it's going to shift off to the west. There'll be a break over the eastern U.S. in the 6 to 10 day range, and then it's going to push again east and intensify. So there'll be a break, but it looks like it's going to be followed by, again, hot weather. So as we go to the next 1 to 5 days, most parts of the nation above normal temperatures, but the core of the heat pushes off a bit to the west, and the central part of the U.S. not quite as bad. Precipitation, a very scattered type pattern here and there over the Midwest, over the Ohio River Valley, Louisiana. That's needed in that region, lower Mississippi Basin, that could get some, but the southeast U.S., generally just some scattered precipitation here and there, low probabilities, nothing all that widespread, and perhaps a bit in Texas, but I don't think this is going to make that much difference. It's generally going to be light. Now here's the July 29th through August 3rd. The high pressure is centered over the western U.S. It begins to build, and with this ridge in the west, we get a trough in the east, and that's going to bring a backdoor cool front down, and that's going to bring some drier weather and temperatures not as hot over the parts of the eastern U.S. And you can see that here, centered over Illinois, the eastern Corn Belt, and even into parts of the upper southeast U.S. Temperatures falling back to normal, which this time of year they're already hot, and then the core of heat over the western half of the U.S. Now, this is actually August 3rd through August 8th. I didn't change the title. And this is where this high pressure intensifies, and you don't get as much of a dip. The jet stream goes further north, and that means, and this is the 11 through 15 day range, so it's out there a bit. I think we're looking at hot and dry weather. That energy, upper energy, is not as strong over the Midwest. So I think we're looking at the early part of August right now, hot, unusually hot temperatures centered over the middle part of the nation, and dry conditions are below normal precipitation as well. So this week, if we can get some rain in the areas in green, that'll be good. You can see the southeast U.S. over the southern and eastern sections, a strong signal for dry weather. There could be some scattered precipitation in the upper part here, especially parts of Tennessee. Sort of a chance of precipitation, Texas and Oklahoma, but nothing all that strong. Then as we get into week 2, I see a lot more yellow across the southern tier, strong signal for dry weather, and over the Midwest, still just enough energy that jet streams up here, perhaps the upper Midwest, but I think for the most part we're looking at below normal precipitation in week 2. So hazard outlook, it's mainly heat, excessive heat over the next day or so, and then we'll get into that break for a while. Still hot, but not as hot. And then let's keep a lookout for that hot and dry period again in August. So hope you stay cool during this hot summertime weather. And if you have any questions, just send me them via email. I'll be glad to answer them. And have a great week.